surprise.
No.
When women are carrying more body weight, it's a hormone-producing organ. Body fat is not just jello in a bag. Body fat, each fat cell is metabolically active, creating estrogens that are causing your body to be in an abnormal state. The sweet spot for fertility is, if you measure your BMI, your body mass index.
Neal.
And if people have never done it, you just go online and you can look up BMI calculator. You put in your height and your weight. And what it'll say is that a healthy BMI is between 18.5 and 25. Over 25 is overweight. But within that huge, broad fork, the sweet spot for fertility is around 19 or 20. So it's not just within the healthy range, but within kind of the skinny side of the healthy range.
Why does my body weight, my sort of body mass, impact how well my reproductive organs are working?
Well, for men, we don't see quite so much that sweet spot. Although what we do see is that if a man acquires more body fat, what's going to happen is he's making more estrogen and losing his testosterone.
So the more weight you have, the more of these sort of estrogens and testosterones the body produces.
The more body fat that you have, the more a man's body will take the testosterone and convert it to estrogen. So you're losing testosterone, gaining estrogen, which is the last thing that you want. But there's another part of the fertility issue, and that's dairy products. And researchers have been looking at this for a long period of time.
Which researchers?
There has been concern that dairy products interfere with fertility, both for men and for women. And Dan Kramer at Harvard University was really a proponent of this, looking at different countries, and countries where dairy was just not their thing. There are a lot of countries, particularly in Asia, where dairy just isn't a thing. And there are others where it's everyday food. And you could see fertility tracking inversely with dairy consumption.
Yeah, it's nothing.
There was something about dairy that was getting in the way. And
no, Neal.
What his theory was that it's not, in this case, the dairy fat. He believed and wrote that it might be the dairy sugar, because the dairy sugar is lactose. And it's famous because a lot of people don't digest lactose very well. But the ones who don't digest it are the lucky ones, because you're not going to consume it. The unlucky ones are people who can digest lactose, and it breaks into two sugars. The lactose sugar has glucose and galactose attached together. And when it breaks apart, that galactose, we believe, is toxic to the ovary. That's a theory, but there's evidence to suggest that it's true. And our concern is not just that it interferes with fertility, but that it's also associated with ovarian cancer. So stay tuned.
Is there a link there also with fiber and fertility? If we have a low fiber diet, will our fertility drop?
We would have to think so, because all of these things sort of go in the same direction. A plant-based diet tends to get your hormones in a better balance.
Why though? What is fiber doing inside the body that's causing my hormones to change?
Right, exactly. Good question.
Okay, your liver, every minute of every day, even while you're asleep, is filtering your blood. One of the things it filters out is anything that shouldn't be there, a toxin, or even a medication. Your liver says, I'm not sure we want this in your blood. It'll try to remove it. And excess estrogens are also removed. When they're removed by the liver cells, they're sent through into the intestinal tract. Your liver, through the bile duct, sends unwanted estrogens, excess estrogens, down into the intestinal tract, and they go out into the toilet. Except, let's say I don't have much fiber in my diet.
Right.
Let's say that I'm eating cheese and I'm eating a lot of meat. These don't have fiber at all.
Yeah, you said that.
In that case, the estrogens go down the intestinal tract, and before they can be excreted, they're reabsorbed through the intestinal wall back into the blood. Doctors call this enterohepatic circulation.
I don't give a
And so that very same estrogen molecule that your liver spotted, and it removed it, and it sent it down into your intestinal tract, thinking it was getting rid of it. It went through the intestinal wall back into the blood and ended up at the liver.
Because there wasn't enough fiber.
Because there's not enough fiber. If you have fiber in your diet, the fiber grabs those estrogen molecules and it carries them out with the waste.
Okay, so this is my conclusion here, just to make sure I'm perfectly clear. If I have a lot of excess fat on my body, that means that I'm going to be producing more, if I'm a woman, I'm going to be producing a lot of more estrogen.
Yes.
Because the fat cells produce estrogen. So there's more estrogen being produced. And if I don't have the fiber, that estrogen is going to go into my liver, and then it's going to be reabsorbed back into my bloodstream and stay there, increasing my estrogen levels to a point where I'm struggling with fertility. But if I do have a lot of fiber, the fiber will grab that excess estrogen and it will take it out into the toilet.
Exactly. And you
Start to finish.
hormones, you want to be in balance.
Yes.
Not too little, not too much. Hormones will kill you. Thyroid hormone. All of these things can ultimately be fatal if they're in too high an amount or too low of an amount.
What's a thyroid?
The thyroid is this little Clark
Jeez, seriously?
Kent at the base of your neck.
Yeah.
You can barely feel that it's there, but the thyroid gland makes thyroid hormone, which gives you energy. And if it's not working, you know it. You get out of bed in the morning, you look in the mirror and you say, I just don't look right. My energy's not good. There's something wrong with my hair. My skin doesn't feel right. And a lot of people are low in thyroid.
I've heard that phrase before a few times, underactive thyroid. Mm-hmm. Does that just mean that the thyroid's not producing enough thyroid hormone?
Exactly. It's not making enough. And there are two reasons for it. The first reason is that you can't make one molecule of thyroid hormone if you don't have iodine in your diet. And iodine is an element that's in the earth, it's in seaweeds, it's in a number of things like that, but you may not be consuming it. Now, luckily, there is iodide added to salt. So your average person in most countries gets iodine in that from that source. And people who live in Japan and countries where they eat sea vegetables a lot get huge amounts of iodine. But if you're low in iodine, you can't make thyroid hormone. The bigger reason, though, here in the US is antibodies. That your body makes antibodies to kill bacteria or to kill viruses. Your white blood cells make these antibodies, which are protein torpedoes that find that virus and knock it out. But for some reason, your white blood cells will make antibodies that attack you. And they attack your thyroid gland. And they stop it from working.
Yes. Why would that occur?
And autoimmune conditions there are many of them. Rheumatoid arthritis is antibodies are attacking the lining of your joints. And what we believe is happening is that something entered your body and triggered that antibody release.
Yes. Those crafty plants, putting those things in their tissues to kill us, to discourage us from eating them and shit.
And that something could be a dietary protein, like dairy proteins
or
meat. Now, no one has ever done a study to this point to see if a plant-based diet could reverse hypothyroidism. But we have evidence that they should. Because first of all, in the Adventist Health Study, they brought in 60, 70,000 people. And they showed that the people with the most hypothyroidism, the people in whom it was most common, were the big dairy consumers. In fact, vegetarians who were eating lots and lots of milk and cheese. The dairy protein, we believe, is the trigger for this.
Yeah, but
the people who had the least hypothyroidism were the vegans. When it came to
that's not true.
Hyperthyroidism, the same thing happens, but the physiology is a little different. Your antibodies are now attacking the turn-off switch. So the thyroid can't turn off. You can't regulate it anymore, and you're cranking out too much thyroid hormone. They are the people who have the most risk, are the meat eaters.
None.
Omnivores, people eating a lot of meat, a lot of dairy. Again, the vegans are the lowest in both. And we do see individual cases, anecdotal cases of people who've changed their diets and their thyroid's improved. But what we need is a randomized trial.
Yeah, and I think that's the important point, isn't it? Because I always think when I've heard people talking about the sort of meat-eating diet versus the vegan diet, my brain goes, well, the fact that could be a massive stereotype and it might be wrong, so just to caveat that. But I tend to think that people that eat a vegan diet generally make better health choices outside of their diet. They tend to have more exercise. They tend to just be more
than whom?
Conscious. They tend to probably smoke less. They probably drink less alcohol. Versus someone on the typical American diet who's having McDonald's, having alcohol, lots of sugar, processed foods, etc., probably exercising less. So in those sort of mass scale studies that aren't controlled and randomized, I go, it's hard to believe anything because I don't know the full picture.
Nice.
We saw this particularly when we looked at intelligence testing in kids. The kids who are raised on plant-based diets score much higher on intellectual testing. I believe that in those kids, it's probably an artifact that they're raised by parents who are very well educated. They're giving their kids every opportunity. And so they're using a plant-based diet for the kid because they think it's the best thing. However, the answer to this is to do a randomized trial, because when you bring in people who are all eating a junk food diet, and then you can randomly assign some people to a control group and others to a specific dietary intervention, then you're taking people who have been eating the same kind of diet, but what you're changing is the foods that they're eating. And let me be clear, away from animal products is always a good idea.
No,
however, when you pick and choose what's left, there's a big difference between a bowl of blueberries and a plate of chips.
Fuck me, is there?
So what we want to, it's always a good idea to go away from the animal products.
Still.
To bring in the best of what's left. And if we choose the foods the right way, we can knock off that weight we've wanted to knock off, and we can really reclaim our health in a good way.